Certainly. Here's a focused highlight of how the newly married couple, Deng and Insaf, are treated in 4 key situations after their marriage, based on the content of The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed. 1. At the hotel. When Deng and Insaf try to check into a hotel for their honeymoon, they face immediate suspicion and discrimination. Receptionist's attitude. The receptionist refuses to believe they are married, demands a marriage certificate, and mocks Deng by calling him Banjas, a derogatory term for a Southern African boy. Racial prejudice. The receptionist and other guests express disbelief and hostility at the sight of a black African man with a white Arab woman. The couple is surrounded by stares, whispers, and open mockery. Outcome. They're denied a room at multiple hotels, with staff and guests making it clear that such a marriage is seen as unnatural and unacceptable. Even when they finally find a place, it is only because the owner is from Deng's own Dinka tribe. 2. On the bus. Their experience on public transportation is also marked by racism and harassment. Crowded bus. On a crowded bus, Deng and Insaf are subjected to stares and whispers. Some men grope Insaf, and Deng has to physically defend her. Verbal abuse. On another bus, 2 drunk Arab men behind them loudly insult the couple, calling Deng a black, uncircumcised Negro slave and Insaf a slutty Northern Arab whore. Public humiliation. The couple is forced to leave the bus to escape the abuse, realizing that public transportation exposes them to constant danger and humiliation. 3. Encounter with the old man. Direct racism. While waiting for Deng to return with food, an old Arab man approaches Insaf and, upon learning that Deng is her husband, expresses shock and disgust. He asks, "Are there no Arab men in this country, and that was why you married an African man like that black-faced Negro?" Emotional impact. Insaf is deeply insulted and hurt by this encounter, which reinforces her sense of isolation and the social taboo of her marriage. 4. The 2 Arab police officers. Police harassment. Deng and Insaf are confronted by 2 Arab police officers while sitting together on the riverbank. The officers accuse them of indecency and demand proof of marriage. Destruction of evidence. When Deng presents their marriage certificate, the officers tear it up, calling it fake and refusing to believe that a beautiful, free Arab girl could marry a black Negro slave. Threats and humiliation. The officers threaten to arrest them, accuse Insaf of being a prostitute, and only relent when Haj Abdullah, the man who sheltered Insaf, confirms their marriage. Even then, the officers remain skeptical and hostile. Summary table. Situation, nature of treatment, key details. Hotel racial discrimination, suspicion, public mockery, denied rooms, forced to prove marriage, open hostility. Bus harassment, racism, sexual assault, public humiliation, groping, insults, forced to leave bus. Old man direct racism, social rejection, why marry a black man, disgust and disbelief. Police legal harassment, destruction of marriage proof, threats, marriage certificate torn, accused of prostitution, only released after intervention. Overall impact. These episodes illustrate the systemic racism, colorism, and social prejudice Deng and Insaf face as an interracial couple. Their love is constantly challenged by suspicion, humiliation, and threats from ordinary people, authority figures, and even the law. The narrative uses these encounters to expose the deep-rooted barriers to acceptance and dignity for couples who cross racial and cultural boundaries. Certainly. Here's an analysis of the psychological impact on Deng and Insaf, the newly married couple in The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed, focusing on the aftermath of their marriage and the hostile treatment they face in Sudanese society. Psychological impact on Deng. 1. Humiliation and loss of dignity. Deng is repeatedly humiliated in public spaces, hotels, buses, by police, and even by strangers, for marrying outside his race and tribe. The constant questioning of his legitimacy as Insaf's husband, the destruction of their marriage certificate, and being called slurs like banjas, and black Negro slave erode his sense of dignity and self-worth. The refusal of hotels to accommodate them and the disbelief that an Arab woman could love him reinforce his outsider status. 2. Anger and frustration. Deng's attempts to defend his wife and their marriage are met with violence, ridicule, and institutional racism. He is forced to physically defend Insaf from harassment and to argue for their right to exist as a couple, which leads to feelings of helplessness and rage. 3. Alienation and isolation. Deng is alienated not only from the broader Arab society, but also from his own family, who are wary of the consequences of his marriage. The lack of acceptance and repeated rejection from both communities leave him feeling isolated, with only Insaf as his anchor. 4. Psychological exhaustion. The relentless need to justify his marriage, defend his wife, and fight for basic respect leads to emotional and psychological exhaustion. The couple's inability to find a safe space, even for their honeymoon, creates a sense of hopelessness and despair. Psychological impact on Insaf. 1. Shame and internalized stigma. Insaf is subjected to public shaming, sexual harassment, and slander, being called a slutty Northern Arab whore and accused of prostitution. The disbelief that she could love Deng and the suggestion that she must be a prostitute to be with him cause her to internalize feelings of shame and unworthiness. 2. Fear and anxiety. The threat of violence, legal persecution, and social ostracism create a constant state of fear and anxiety. The destruction of their marriage certificate by police and the threat of arrest make her feel unsafe and vulnerable. 3. Grief and loss. Insaf grieves the loss of her family, community, and social standing. Her marriage to Deng, instead of bringing joy, becomes a source of pain and exile. She mourns the inability to celebrate her love openly and the loss of a normal married life. 4. Resilience and defiance. Despite the trauma, Insaf demonstrates moments of resilience, standing up to abusers, defending her marriage, and refusing to be cowed by threats. Her ability to endure humiliation and still assert her love for Deng is a testament to her inner strength, though it comes at a great psychological cost. Shared psychological effects. 1. Trauma bonding. The couple's shared suffering deepens their emotional bond, but also creates a trauma bond, where their relationship is defined as much by adversity as by love. 2. Hypervigilance. Both become hypervigilant, constantly on guard against threats from strangers, authorities, and even family members. 3. Erosion of hope. The repeated failures to find acceptance or safety lead to a gradual erosion of hope for a peaceful, dignified life together. 4. Identity crisis. Both struggle with their identities, Deng as a Black African in an Arab-dominated society, and Insaf as an Arab woman who defies her community's norms. Their marriage becomes a battleground for issues of race, gender, and belonging, leaving them both questioning their place in the world. Conclusion. The psychological impact on Deng and Insaf is profound and multifaceted. They endure humiliation, fear, and isolation, but also demonstrate remarkable resilience. Their love, instead of being a source of comfort, becomes a crucible that tests their mental and emotional limits. The novel uses their experiences to expose the destructive power of racism, colorism, and social prejudice, not just on society, but on the individual psyche. Based on the content of The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed, society plays a central and relentless role in reinforcing and deepening the trauma experienced by Deng and Insaf. Here's an analysis of how this happens, with direct reference to the events and social dynamics described in the novel. 1. Public and institutional rejection. Hotels and public spaces. When Deng and Insaf attempt to check into hotels, they are not only denied service, but are openly mocked and humiliated. Staff and guests treat their marriage as unnatural, and their union is met with disbelief and disgust. This public rejection is not just personal but institutional, as even legal documents, their marriage certificate, are dismissed and destroyed by authorities. On public transport, on buses, they are subjected to sexual harassment, racist slurs, and public humiliation. The crowd does not intervene to help. Instead, their suffering is either ignored or becomes a spectacle for others' amusement. 2. Community surveillance and gossip. Neighborhood and family, both in their home communities and in the diaspora, neighbors, relatives, and even strangers constantly monitor, judge, and spread rumors about Deng and Insaf. Their relationship is the subject of gossip, slander, and false accusations, e.g., that Insaf is a prostitute or that Deng is a slave. Mob mentality. When Insaf is accused of crimes or shamed in public, the community acts as a mob, quick to believe the worst, eager to ostracize, and ready to enforce social norms through collective condemnation. 3. Legal and religious systems. Sharia court and police. The legal system, especially the Sharia court, is depicted as an extension of social prejudice. Judges openly express racial and gender bias, invalidate their marriage on the grounds of tribal inadequacy, and threaten them with flogging or worse if they continue their relationship. Police harassment. Police officers not only refuse to protect them, but actively participate in their humiliation, tearing up their marriage certificate, accusing Insaf of prostitution, and threatening arrest or violence. 4. Everyday encounters and microaggressions. Strangers and elders. Encounters with strangers, such as the old man who questions why Insaf would marry a black Negro, reinforce the message that their love is unacceptable and shameful. Peers and students. Even among the Sudanese diaspora in India, Insaf is slandered, called a prostitute and drug dealer, and physically attacked by other Sudanese students. The community's willingness to believe and amplify these accusations leaves her isolated and vulnerable. 5. Gendered and racial double standards. Selective morality. The novel highlights how women like Insaf are harshly judged and punished for crossing racial or social boundaries, while men who commit far worse crimes, such as attempted rape, are often excused or their actions minimized. Victim blaming. When Insaf is attacked or slandered, the community blames her for bringing shame, rather than supporting her as a victim of injustice. 6. Social ostracism and isolation. Loss of support networks. Both Deng and Insaf are cut off from family, friends, and community. Even those who initially offer help, like Haj Abdullah's family, eventually distance themselves under social pressure. Exile and statelessness. Their trauma is compounded by forced migration, legal limbo, and the constant threat of deportation or violence, making them perpetual outsiders wherever they go. Summary table. Mechanisms of societal reinforcement of trauma. Mechanism how society reinforces trauma. Public rejection, humiliation in hotels, buses, public spaces, denial of service, open mockery. Community surveillance, gossip, rumor, mob action, collective shaming. Legal/religious systems, biased courts, invalidation of marriage, police harassment, threats of violence. Everyday encounters, microaggressions, racist/sexist insults, physical attacks. Double standards, harsher judgment for women, excusing male violence, victim blaming. Ostracism/isolation, loss of family/community support, forced exile, statelessness. Conclusion: the cycle of trauma. Society in The Abominable Love does not merely witness Deng and Insaf's suffering, it actively produces, amplifies, and sustains it. Through public shaming, institutional discrimination, and the withdrawal of compassion, society ensures that their trauma is not a private burden, but a public spectacle and a tool of social control. The couple's resilience is remarkable, but the relentless pressure from all sides leaves deep psychological scars and shapes every aspect of their lives. Here's a focused answer based on the content of The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed regarding how the married couple, Insaf and Deng, are ill-treated in Haj Abdullah's home. How the married couple are ill-treated in Haj Abdullah's home. 1. Initial compassion turns to hostility. When Insaf first arrives at Hajj Abdullah's home, she is treated with compassion and given shelter, food, and a sense of belonging. However, after she marries Deng, the African boy, the atmosphere changes, especially after their marriage is annulled by the Sharia court. 2. Racial and social prejudice. The family's attitude shifts due to deep-seated racial prejudice. Hajj Abdullah's wife, Haja Maryam, becomes openly hostile toward Deng, referring to him in racist terms and expressing anger that her Arab guest married a black Negro slave. Haja Maryam spreads rumors and sows distrust, telling Insaf that Deng wants to marry one of her own daughters, which is not true. This is meant to create jealousy and drive a wedge between the couple. 3. Manipulation and isolation. Haja Maryam manipulates Insaf by isolating her emotionally, discouraging her from seeing Deng, and suggesting that he is unfaithful or only interested in Arab women for their appearance. She also prevents Insaf from knowing when Deng comes to visit, telling her that the person at the door is a beggar or a stranger, not her husband. 4. Pressure to separate. Both Hajj Abdullah and his wife pressure Insaf to leave Deng after the Sharia court annuls their marriage. They warn her that if she continues to live with Deng, she will be considered an apostate and cut off from their family forever. When Insaf refuses to leave Deng, Hajj Abdullah threatens to disown her, saying she will never be welcome in their home again. 5. Gendered and racial double standards. The family's treatment of Insaf and Deng is marked by double standards. While they initially show hospitality, their support is conditional on Insaf conforming to their expectations and not defying social and racial norms. When the couple faces legal and social trouble, the family distances themselves, prioritizing their own reputation over compassion. 6. Emotional abuse. Insaf is subjected to emotional abuse through constant reminders of her disobedience, her shame, and the supposed disgrace she brings to the family by marrying outside her race and tribe. Haja Maryam's words are particularly cruel, telling Insaf that Deng is only interested in Arab women for their looks and that he will betray her. 7. Forced choices and threats. Insaf is forced to choose between her husband and the only family that has shown her kindness. The threat of being cut off and left alone is used as a tool to control her decisions. Summary table. Form of ill-treatment description. Racial prejudice, open hostility, and racist remarks from Haja Maryam toward Deng. Manipulation, lies, and rumors to create distrust between Insaf and Deng. Isolation, preventing Insaf from seeing or communicating with Deng. Pressure to separate, threats of disownment if Insaf stays with Deng. Emotional abuse, reminders of shame, disobedience, and disgrace. Gendered double standards, conditional support based on conformity to social/racial norms. Forced choices, making Insaf choose between her husband and her surrogate family. In essence, while Hajj Abdullah's home initially offers Insaf refuge, the couple's marriage, especially after the Sharia court's annulment, exposes them to manipulation, emotional abuse, racial prejudice, and social isolation. The family's support is withdrawn, and both Insaf and Deng are pressured and ultimately forced out, highlighting the destructive power of prejudice and the fragility of conditional compassion. Hajj Abdullah's role in the abuse. 1. Initial compassion, later conditional support. At first, Hajj Abdullah is a figure of compassion. He rescues Insaf from starvation, gives her shelter, and treats her as a daughter. However, his support is conditional. It is based on Insaf's conformity to his expectations and the norms of his household and community. 2. Passive complicity and failure to protect. When the atmosphere in the home turns hostile, especially due to Haja Maryam's racism and manipulation, Hajj Abdullah does not actively defend Insaf and Deng. He allows his wife's hostility and the growing tension to go unchecked, failing to intervene or mediate meaningfully. He does not stop Haja Maryam from isolating Insaf, spreading rumors, or emotionally abusing her. 3. Pressure to conform and separate. After the Sharia court annuls Insaf and Deng's marriage, Hajj Abdullah pressures Insaf to separate from Deng. He warns her that if she continues to live with Deng, she will be considered an apostate and will be cut off from his family forever. He uses the threat of disownment as a tool of control, making Insaf choose between her husband and the only family that has shown her kindness. 4. Prioritizing reputation over compassion. Haj Abdullah's actions are influenced by fear of social backlash and concern for his family's reputation. When external pressures mount, from the community, religious authorities, or the law, he distances himself from Insaf and Deng rather than standing by them. He ultimately sides with his wife and the prevailing social norms, rather than with the couple's right to love and dignity. 5. Emotional manipulation. Haj Abdullah participates in the emotional manipulation by reminding Insaf of the shame and disobedience she brings, reinforcing her sense of isolation and guilt. He frames his withdrawal of support as a moral and religious necessity, rather than a personal or social choice. Summary table. Action/role description. Initial compassion rescues and shelters Insaf, treats her as a daughter. Conditional support is withdrawn if Insaf does not conform to expectations. Passive complicity fails to stop or challenge his wife's abuse and manipulation. Pressure to separate urges Insaf to leave Deng after Sharia annulment, threatens disownment. Prioritizing reputation distances himself from the couple to protect family reputation. Emotional manipulation reminds Insaf of shame, frames withdrawal as religious/moral duty. In essence, Haj Abdullah's role in the abuse is complex. He is not the primary instigator of hostility, but his passivity, conditional support, and eventual siding with social/religious norms over compassion make him complicit in the couple's suffering. He becomes an agent of the same oppressive system that initially victimized Insaf, illustrating how even well-meaning individuals can perpetuate harm when they prioritize conformity and reputation over empathy and justice. Based on The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed, Haj Abdullah is a complex character whose motivations evolve throughout the story. Here's a focused analysis of his motivations, especially as they relate to his treatment of Insaf and Deng. Haj Abdullah's motivations. 1. Religious duty and piety. Haj Abdullah is portrayed as a devout Muslim, deeply committed to the values of charity, hospitality, and religious observance. His initial motivation for rescuing Insaf, finding her eating from a garbage container, is rooted in Islamic compassion and the duty to help the needy, especially a fellow Muslim in distress. He sees himself as a moral and religious man, and much of his behavior is guided by what he believes is required by God and the community. 2. Compassion and humanitarianism. He genuinely feels pity for Insaf's suffering and wants to offer her a safe haven, treating her as a daughter. His compassion is sincere, and he is moved by her vulnerability and innocence, as evidenced by his tears and emotional responses when her plight is discussed in court. 3. Social reputation and community pressure. As the story progresses, Haj Abdullah becomes increasingly concerned about the reputation of his family within the community. He is aware of the gossip, rumors, and potential backlash that could arise from sheltering a girl with a scandalous past or from supporting a marriage that defies racial and tribal norms. When external pressures mount, from the Sharia court, neighbors, or religious authorities, his motivation shifts toward protecting his family's honor and social standing. 4. Conformity to tradition and law. Haj Abdullah is ultimately a product of his society. He feels compelled to conform to the expectations of religious law, Sharia, and tribal custom, even when they conflict with his personal compassion. When the Sharia court annuls Insaf and Deng's marriage, he feels obligated to accept the ruling, even though he personally disagrees with its fairness. He believes that defying the court or religious authorities would be crossing God's limits, and he fears the consequences for himself and his family. 5. Fear of ostracism and loss. He fears being ostracized or condemned by his community if he continues to support Insaf and Deng against the prevailing norms. The threat of being cut off from his own family or losing the respect of his wife and daughters motivates him to withdraw support from the couple when they refuse to separate. 6. Paternalism and control. Hajj Abdullah's kindness is paternalistic. He wants to help, but on his own terms and within the boundaries he sets. When Insaf and Deng assert their independence or challenge his authority by refusing to separate after the annulment, he feels betrayed and resorts to emotional manipulation, threatening to disown Insaf. Summary table. Motivation: how it manifests. Religious duty: acts of charity, hospitality, and moral guidance, adherence to Islamic law. Compassion: genuine care for Insaf's suffering, emotional investment in her well-being. Social reputation: concern for family honor, fear of gossip and scandal. Conformity to tradition/law: acceptance of Sharia court rulings, reluctance to challenge religious authority. Fear of ostracism: withdrawal of support when faced with community backlash. Paternalism/control: conditional support, expects gratitude and obedience from those he helps. In essence, Hajj Abdullah is motivated by a mix of genuine compassion, religious piety, and a deep-seated need to conform to social and religious expectations. His initial kindness is real, but it is ultimately limited by his fear of scandal, his desire to protect his family's reputation, and his belief in the authority of religious law. When forced to choose between empathy and conformity, he chooses the latter, demonstrating how even well-intentioned individuals can become complicit in systems of oppression when they prioritize tradition and reputation over justice and love. Here's a comparative analysis of the attitudes of Mr. Majak Nasir's family and Hajj Abdullah's family toward the married couple, Insaf and Deng, based on the content of The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed. Mr. Majak Nasir's family, Deng's family. Attitude toward the couple. Initial skepticism and disapproval. Deng's parents, Mr. Majak Nasir and Mrs. Ababa Nasir, are deeply skeptical and disapproving of his relationship with Insaf, an Arab girl from northern Sudan. Their disapproval is rooted in racial and social prejudice. They are acutely aware of the racism and stigma attached to a union between a Southern African, Dinka, and a Northern Arab. They fear their son will never be accepted or respected in Insaf's world. Family honor and reputation. They worry about the shame and social consequences for their own family if Deng pursues the relationship. Conditional acceptance. Deng's parents would only accept a marriage that aligns with their own ethnic, religious, and social expectations, e.g., Deng's engagement to Susie, a Dinka Christian. Rejection and ultimatums. When Deng insists on defending and staying loyal to Insaf, his parents threaten to disown him and actually expel him from the family home. His father, Mr. Majak Nasir, even divorces his wife over the conflict. Blame and hostility. They blame Insaf for all the misfortunes that befall Deng, including his injury, disability, and family estrangement. Mrs. Ababa Nasir, in particular, is openly hostile and refuses to accept Insaf, even when she tries to reconcile in London. No reconciliation. The family's stance is rigid. They do not forgive or accept Insaf, and Deng is forced to choose between his wife and his parents. Hajj Abdullah's family. Attitude toward the couple. Initial compassion and inclusion. Hajj Abdullah finds Insaf destitute and takes her in, treating her as a daughter. The family, including his wife, Haja Maryam, and their daughters, initially welcomes her warmly and integrates her into their daily life. Conditional support. Their support is genuine but ultimately conditional. As Insaf's relationship with Deng becomes public and controversial, and as legal/religious pressures mount, especially after the Sharia court annuls the marriage, their attitude shifts. Manipulation and pressure. Haja Maryam becomes increasingly hostile, manipulates Insaf emotionally, and tries to sow distrust between her and Deng. She spreads rumors and discourages the relationship. Withdrawal of support. When Insaf and Deng refuse to separate after the annulment, Hajj Abdullah and his wife threaten to disown Insaf and cut her off from the only family that has shown her kindness. Prioritizing reputation and conformity, the family's actions are motivated by fear of scandal, community backlash, and a desire to conform to religious and social norms, even at the expense of compassion. Final rejection. When Insaf chooses to stay with Deng and defy the Sharia court's ruling, Hajj Abdullah declares her an apostate and tells her never to return to his house. Comparison table. Aspect: Mr. Majak Nasir's family, Hajj Abdullah's family. Initial attitude: skeptical, disapproving, racially and socially prejudiced, compassionate, inclusive, treats Insaf as a daughter. Basis of judgment: race, tribe, religion, family honor, social reputation, compassion, religious duty, but also social reputation. Response to marriage: rejects and threatens to disown Deng for marrying Insaf, initially supports, but withdraws support under pressure. Handling of conflict: ultimatums, expulsion, no reconciliation, blames Insaf, manipulation, emotional pressure, eventual disownment. Role of mother: Mrs. Ababa Nasser is openly hostile, refuses reconciliation. Haja Maryam becomes hostile, manipulates, spreads rumors. Role of father: Mr. Majak Nasir is stern, prioritizes honor, expels son. Hajj Abdullah is compassionate, but ultimately conforms. Final outcome: Deng is forced to choose between wife and family. Chooses wife. Insaf is forced to choose between husband and family. Chooses husband, is disowned. Key insights. Both families ultimately reject the couple when forced to choose between compassion and conformity to social/religious norms. Deng's family's rejection is immediate and absolute, rooted in racial and tribal prejudice, and they never accept Insaf. Hajj Abdullah's family's rejection is gradual, beginning with genuine compassion, but ending in emotional manipulation and disownment when social/religious pressures become overwhelming. Both families prioritize reputation, tradition, and conformity over the happiness and dignity of the couple. The couple is forced into isolation and exile by the combined weight of family, community, and religious authority. Here's a comparative analysis of the mother's roles in both families: Mrs. Ababa Nasser, Deng's mother, and Haja Maryam, Hajj Abdullah's wife, as depicted in The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed. Mrs. Ababa Nasser, Deng's mother. Role and attitude: protective and possessive, fiercely protective of her son, especially after his injury and disability. She sees herself as his primary guardian and is deeply invested in his well-being. Judgmental and unforgiving, she harbors deep resentment toward Insaf, blaming her for Deng's suffering, disability, and the family's misfortunes. She is quick to judge and slow to forgive. Emotionally volatile, her reactions are intense. She is prone to outbursts, public scenes, and is not afraid to express her anger or pain, even in front of strangers. Traditional and suspicious, she is suspicious of outsiders and resistant to accepting Insaf, whom she sees as a source of trouble and pain. Active opponent, when Insaf tries to reunite with Deng in London, Mrs. Ababa Nasser is openly hostile, calls security, and has Insaf detained by the police for using a false identity. She actively works to keep the couple apart. Catalyst for rupture, her refusal to accept Insaf leads to a final break between her and Deng, forcing him to choose between his wife and his mother.
Hajjah Maryam, Hajj Abdullah's wife.
Role and attitude: initially nurturing. At first, she welcomes Insaf into the family, treating her with kindness and integrating her into daily life. Conditional support: her support is genuine but ultimately conditional. As Insaf's relationship with Deng becomes controversial, and as legal/religious pressures mount, her attitude shifts. Manipulative and hostile, she becomes increasingly hostile toward Deng, spreading rumors and sowing distrust between Insaf and Deng. She manipulates Insaf emotionally, suggesting Deng is unfaithful or only interested in Arab women for their looks. Gatekeeper, she controls access to Insaf, sometimes preventing her from seeing Deng or knowing when he visits. She also tries to arrange other marriage prospects for Insaf when the couple's union is threatened. prioritizes reputation. Her actions are motivated by fear of scandal and a desire to protect her family's reputation. She is willing to emotionally isolate and pressure Insaf to conform to social expectations. Instrument of disownment. When Insaf refuses to leave Deng, Haja Mariam supports Haj Abdullah in disowning her, making it clear that she is no longer welcome in their home. Comparison table. Aspect: Mrs. Ababa Nasser, Deng's mother, Haja Mariam, Haj Abdullah's wife. Initial attitude: suspicious, hostile, never accepting. Insaf: warm, nurturing, treats Insaf as a daughter. Response to conflict: openly hostile, calls authorities, public outbursts, becomes manipulative, spreads rumors, isolates Insaf. Motivation: protect son, maintain family purity, avoid shame, protect family reputation, avoid scandal. Role in family: active opponent, catalyst for family rupture, gatekeeper, emotional manipulator, enforcer of conformity. Final outcome: forces Deng to choose, leads to permanent rupture, supports disownment, cuts off Insaf when she defies norms. Key insights. Both mothers ultimately act as enforcers of social and family boundaries, but their methods differ. Mrs. Ababa Nasser is direct and confrontational, while Haja Mariam is more manipulative and emotionally controlling. Both prioritize family reputation and conformity over compassion, but Mrs. Ababa Nasser's opposition is rooted in deep personal pain and loss, while Haja Mariam's is more about social standing and fear of scandal. Both women become obstacles to the couple's happiness, actively or passively contributing to their isolation and suffering. Their actions reflect the broader themes of the novel: the destructive power of prejudice, the fragility of conditional compassion, and the ways in which women can both suffer from and perpetuate patriarchal and social oppression. If you'd like direct quotes or a more detailed breakdown of specific scenes involving these mothers, let me know. 1. Mr. Majak Nasir's visit to his son Deng's hut. Setting. Mr. Majak Nasir, Deng's father, a high-ranking Sudanese army officer, visits Deng in his small, impoverished hut in the Alisha shantytown after Deng has been estranged from his family due to his relationship with Insaf. Scene highlights. Shock and disappointment. Mr. Nasir is appalled by the squalor in which his son lives, surrounded by poverty, stray dogs, and children. He is almost unable to recognize Deng, who has become thin, unkempt, and depressed. Blame and accusation. Mr. Nasir blames Insaf for all the family's troubles, calling her a criminal, murderer, thief, and dirty prostitute. He accuses Deng of ruining his life and the family's reputation by refusing to abandon her. Offer of reconciliation, with conditions. Despite his anger, Mr. Nasir offers Deng a chance to return home, but only if he leaves Insaf and their unborn child behind. He makes it clear he will never accept Insaf as part of the family. Deng's loyalty. Deng, in tears, tries to explain that Insaf did not leave him willingly, but was forced away by the Sharia court's annulment of their marriage due to racial prejudice. He insists that Insaf never saw him as inferior and that their love was genuine. He refuses to abandon Insaf, stating he will protect her and their child at any cost, even if it means being disowned. Departure. The encounter ends with Mr. Nasir leaving in anger and disappointment, unable to reconcile with his son as long as Insaf is in his life. Tone. The scene is emotionally charged, filled with pain, misunderstanding, and the clash between tradition and personal loyalty. Mr. Nasir is portrayed as a tragic figure, powerful and proud, but ultimately isolated by his inability to accept his son's choices and the changing world around him. 2. Haj Abdullah's visit to the hut with Insaf. Setting. After the Sharia court annuls Insaf and Deng's marriage, Insaf stays at Haj Abdullah's house. Eventually, she wants to retrieve her belongings from Deng's hut in the shantytown. Haj Abdullah accompanies her. Scene highlights. Emotional distance and pain. Insaf is deeply moved and saddened by Deng's miserable condition when she sees him in mourning, unshaven, and living in poverty. Misunderstandings and manipulation. Hajj Abdullah's wife, Haja Maryam, has been manipulating both Insaf and Deng, telling each that the other no longer loves them or is seeking another partner. Confrontation and clarification. Deng kneels before Insaf, pleading for forgiveness and explaining that he never intended to marry anyone else. He reveals that he tried to visit her 3 times, but was turned away by Haja Maryam. Insaf's realization. Insaf realizes she has been deceived by Haja Maryam and that her anger at Deng was based on lies. Hajj Abdullah's role. Hajj Abdullah admits his wife's actions were motivated by a desire to protect Insaf from further trouble, but he also reiterates that, after the Sharia court's annulment, he cannot support their union. Final choice. Insaf, in tears, tells Hajj Abdullah she cannot leave her husband and her home, even if it means being disowned. Hajj Abdullah warns her that if she stays with Deng, she will be cut off from his family forever. Tone. The scene is filled with heartbreak, reconciliation, and the pain of being forced to choose between love and family. It highlights the destructive power of social and religious pressure, as well as the resilience of the couple's bond. Summary table. Scene key elements. Emotional tone. Mr. Nasir in Deng's hut. Shock at poverty, blame, ultimatum to abandon Insaf, Deng's loyalty, final rupture. Pain, anger, isolation. Hajj Abdullah's visit. Insaf's sadness, manipulation by Haja Maryam, reconciliation. Hajj Abdullah's warning, choice. Heartbreak, reconciliation. If you'd like direct quotes from these scenes or a more detailed narrative summary, let me know. Certainly. Here are direct quotes from The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed for the 2 scenes you requested. 1. Mr. Majak Nasir's visit to his son Deng's hut. When his expensive car stopped in front of his son's small hut, many children and stray dogs surrounded it. These skinny, emaciated black children are either naked or barefoot, and most of the dogs are without owners, rabid and infected. Mr. Nasir is afraid to get out of his car and face those hungry dogs and the emaciated children. The frightened father's eyes became even more frightened when they suddenly saw the tall, thin, black ghost-like person who opened the door of his son's hut and walked towards him. For some time, Mr. Majak Nasir is unable to recognize his son Deng. There is nothing left of his prodigal son that would make him known to his father. Instead of the handsome face, athletic body, fancy clothes, and friendly smile, he saw a gloomy face, a black dress, and a thin body that looked like a zombie who had come out of his grave. So, she left you, Mr. Majak Nasir said angrily. The lost son was unable to respond to his father's opening sentence. He knew that his father would not accept any justification for the misunderstanding that separated him from his Arab wife. Even a stray dog that has no owner will not live here. The prodigal son began to weep. Can you please open your mouth and tell me why she left you? There is a misunderstanding between us, Deng said in a hesitant voice. You disobeyed your father and mother, and this is the punishment for your reckless behavior. I can tell you why Insaf left you. She expected to live in a palace with her body full of gold and jewels, but when she found you to be a miserable person, she left you. She is now living as a second Muslim wife or secret concubine in an upscale neighborhood with a rich old Arab geezer as her sugar daddy. She is a dangerous criminal, murderer, thief, and dirty prostitute. The prodigal son exploded in anger, saying, Insaf has left me because of you, father. We were separated because my father is Majak Nasir and her father is Salah al-Junaid. More simply put, my father is a Negro African and her father is a free Arab. I am also a son of the Dinka tribe and she is a daughter of the Shurjia tribe. If you want me to return to your home, you must accept me along with my wife and the child she is carrying in her womb. I will never allow that accursed Arab woman to step foot on my doorstep. If she comes here into this filthy small nest, don't be surprised if she is reported to the police. 2. Hajj Abdullah's visit to the hut with Insaf. After the first month of their separation, the Arab wife's longing for her African husband reached beyond her ability to keep it inside her heart. By then, she was 4 months pregnant. Then Insaf told Haja Maryam that she wanted to recover some of her possessions from her husband Ding's hut. Haj Abdullah's wife stood against the idea and made her husband stand by her side. When they are unable to convince her, they settled for a compromise. The three agreed that Haj Abdullah would accompany Insaf to her legally annulled husband's hut and bring her belongings. Insaf could not be able to hold back her tears when she saw Dang in his sackcloth of mourning and his miserable condition. She turned her face to hide her tears. Then Haj Abdullah told the legally annulled African husband why they have come. However, the African husband Ding realized the real reason for his Arab wife Insaf's visit to their love nest. Therefore, he went to her and knelt in front of her as if she is the beauty queen Helen, and he is her lover, Paris, who must kidnap her from Haj Abdullah's family and start the Trojan War between the racist Sudanese Arabs and the oppressed Dingo Africans. Dang remained on his knees until Insaf turned her face and looked at him. After that, he stood directly in front of her, and they looked into each other's eyes until they became two souls in one body, as they were before their painful separation. Ding said, "Insaf, how long are you going to boycott me? How long will you deny me? You didn't even give me a chance to explain the misunderstanding between us that day." Haj Abdullah tried to console me in my distress by saying that if I asked for the hand of his Arab daughter Safa in marriage, he would not reject me. But I had never proposed to his daughter, and I have no intention of leaving you and marrying another Arab girl, even if she is Miss Universe. The Arab wife asked her African husband, "Why didn't you come back and explain this to me?" "I came 3 times. And every time, Haj Abdullah's wife kicked me out of her door as if I were a beggar, a thief, or a stray dog. The 3rd time, Haj Abdullah himself told me that I should leave his doorstep and not return to his house again." Then the Arab wife, Insaf, turned her gaze away from her African husband, Dang, and faced her uncle, Haj Abdullah. "Your wife deceived me about my husband Ding. She made me believe that he is no longer interested in me and does not love me because the Sharia court separated me from him forever. Moreover, she lied to me when she told me that my black African husband wanted to marry her white Arab daughter, Safa." Haj Abdullah said calmly, "But my dear daughter, Insaf, this African man, Dang, is no longer your Muslim husband. You cannot live with him as husband and wife after the court of God and his messenger annulled your Islamic marriage in which I functioned as your Muslim guardian. You cannot go beyond God's limits." The Arab wife, Insaf, looked first at her African husband, Dang, and then turned her face toward her uncle, Haj Abdullah. Her eyes are full of tears. She wiped away her tears before saying to the good old man, "I cannot leave my husband and my home and go with you, my good uncle, Haj Abdullah." If you need more context or additional direct quotes from these or related scenes, let me know. Certainly. Here are direct quotes from The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed that reveal Insaf's inner thoughts and emotional state. 1. After fleeing her engagement party, Insaf closed her eyes and placed her fingers in her ears to block the hideous vision and sound of the woman's condemning words. The woman's face was like a human monster or a terrifying zombie that came out of her grave or from the forest and spoiled the happiest moments of her life. Insaf concluded that she has lost her wealthy Arab fiancé, Samir, forever, just as she had lost her African boyfriend, Dang, before him. In an instant, everything turned upside down. Everyone is her enemy now. She cried bitterly when she remembered the kind old woman, Aunt Khadija, the beautiful sister-in-law, Sulwa, and the loving Arab police officer, Khaled Muhammad Yekya. What will they think about her anymore? She felt that she brought them great shame. She has spoiled their names and tarnished their good reputation among the people. Everybody will hold them all responsible for harboring an unidentified girl when they know nothing about her past. She wished she is dead and not alive to witness such a black and fateful day. 2. On the train to Khartoum, facing an unknown future. The more she thought about her dark past, the more she feared her unknown future. Her imagination depicted her past as a monster that haunted her wherever she went. From time to time, She recalled the image of the boy in question and knew that he is a wealthy, educated, and noble young Arab man. However, the beautiful and charming guest, Iqbal Sola al-Junaid, is not sure whether the noble young Arab boy Samir Wad Masood will remain loyal to her, especially when he discovers her dark past. Thinking about this worry bothered her a lot, and she could not find an answer to it. Only the unknown future can tell us and reveal the answer. 3. After being sentenced to death. She knew and understood that she did not kill anyone except the pimp woman who tried to turn her into a kidnapped sex slave and locked her in her home to satisfy her greed for wealth by selling her young body to men, taking her virginity, and desecrating her purity. Therefore, Insaf was surprised when she heard the death sentence against her. Since then, she refused to eat food or drink water except by force. Every day, some violent guards forced a little food and a few drops of water into her dry mouth and empty stomach. They want to keep her alive for 7 days until the day she is hanged to death inside Cooper Central Prison. They don't want to be responsible for starving her to death. During her prolonged period of imprisonment, Insaf lost a lot of weight. Her face became pale, losing half of its beauty, and her body was robbed of its femininity and sexual appeal. She has not been able to wash her body and comb her hair since the day she was sentenced to death. After her condemnation, no one is allowed to visit her. She felt extremely miserable and longed for death to free her from this inhuman treatment. 4. Facing imprisonment and social isolation. Reflecting on her dark past in Sudan and her bad luck in India, the Arab girl wishes that she was not being born in this evil and unjust world and faces the harsh reality of her socially and legally unacceptable abominable love affair with the African Negro boy Ding and their Arab and Zongi or Negro families, and the unhappy married life they live together in Sudan. The accused Sudanese girl has been tempted many times to take her son and escape from the home of the Indian Christian Matthew family and hide somewhere in India, but she resisted the temptation and is determined to remain loyal to her promise to them. 5. After being rejected by the UN in India. As soon as the judge finished his instructions, Insaf felt as if a long, dark tunnel has suddenly been opened before her. She covered her face with one hand and began to cry bitterly. She knows that in a few days she will leave him and begin the journey of her inevitable fate. She may either be sentenced to spend 14 years in an Indian prison. If she escapes this lifelong sentence, she will be extradited to Sudan and go directly to one of the ghost houses in Khartoum City. Then she should wait to be retried in Sudan on charges of adultery, murder, apostasy, and drug smuggling in a foreign country. These passages show Insaf's fear, shame, longing, despair, and resilience, her inner world as she faces relentless adversity. Here are direct quotes from Ding's perspective in The Abominable Love by Dr. A. Ahmed, showing his thoughts, feelings, and inner struggles. 1. On his love and loyalty to Insaf. I truly and genuinely loved her, and I almost worshipped her just as the madman Kays loved his beautiful Arab lover, Layla. I wanted to marry her in a halal Islamic marriage, but she said that her Arab parents would not accept me as her husband because in their eyes I was just a worthless black African Negro slave, and they considered me dirtier than the excrement of their white Arab daughter. Despite their disgusting racist attitudes, their Arab daughter did not see me the way her parents saw me. Rather, she loved me truly and deeply, but she told me that she would not be able to disobey the authority of her Arab father. He is her guardian, and he must choose who would marry his daughter. 2. On defending Insaf despite family pressure. No matter what happens to me, I will not back down because I am confident in your defense ability to prove the innocence of my suspected Arab friend Insaf. 3. On the pain of separation and family rejection. His heart and mind have been torn and divided between difficult choices. His conscience tormented him all night long. His heart is crying for his mother and father. His mind is longing for his African fiancée, Susie. His conscience is bleeding because of the suffering of his Arab lover Insaf. Many times, he pulled his hair and beat his chest to relieve the pain in his heart. He cried over the loss of his African fiancée and regretted separating from his parents, but his longing for his Arab girlfriend prevented him from retracting his correct decision to appoint a lawyer to defend her. He thought that his love for Insaf had died when he lost her in the city of Gedaref, but now he discovered that her love remains in his heart forever. 4. On his sense of responsibility and guilt. Therefore, if I do not defend her righteousness, she may be condemned to being a rebellious girl against her Arab family, committed adultery, and became pregnant out of marriage bond by an African boy. However, all these accusations are not true. No one can exonerate her from these false accusations except me. If Insaf killed, stole, and become a prostitute, it's because of me. I was the one who led her to the edge of that cliff into a high mountain of our forbidden love. If I do not save her, she will fall and ruin her life while she is still a young teenage girl in the prime of her age. 5. On facing his father in the hut. The prodigal son exploded in anger, saying, Insaf has left me because of you, father. We were separated because my father is Majak Nasir and her father is Sulla al-Junaid. More simply put, my father is a Negro African and her father is a free Arab. I am also a son of the Dinka tribe, and she is a daughter of the Shurjia tribe. 6. On choosing Insaf over family. I cannot leave the accused Arab girl, Insaf Sulla al-Junaid, to bear the consequences of our so-called abominable love alone. I am involved in some of the charges against her, and I must defend her no matter what the cost and the risk. I will be a cowardly lover and a traitorous boyfriend if I did not stand with her in her distress and defend her with sincerity and courage. 7. On hope and reunion. He visualized her inside a jail cell with her hands tied by handcuffs, her feet in fetters, and her legs in chains. He imagined her beautiful, innocent face and her charming eyes looking for a rescuer through the iron bars. Her beautiful eyes are staring through the dark dungeon, searching for a savior. He cried bitterly when he saw in his mind his beloved Insaf alone and tied up in that horrific cell. He wished to be by her side inside that dark, bottomless pit to provide her with comfort during her tough time. These quotes show Deng's devotion, pain, sense of responsibility, and unwavering loyalty to Insaf, as well as his struggle with family, society, and his own conscience.